Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. This is your Manchester United versus Brentford preview and your latest Manchester United news as certain players confirm their new contract, Luke Shaw, and United apparently progress in their talks to sign Frimpong, which is a right back that we've been looking at for a while. We've also got some interesting comments from Gary Neville and a few other bits as well. But look, losing to Newcastle wasn't great. I don't know what Newcastle will do because I don't keep enough of an eye on them. We're going to have to keep an eye on them because they're our competitors for top four. But they really enjoyed beating us last night, and fair play that we can still make such a big impact on smaller clubs who love beating us. But the reality is we beat them in the final. I would rather win the trophy than lose those 3 points. So simple as that. But we have got the opportunity to bounce back in two very significant games at Old Trafford against two sides who don't want the ball. Brentford and Everton don't want the ball. So we have a real opportunity to perfectly play two games at Old Trafford against teams that really don't want the ball. So Brentford are a much better team than Everton, but we're going to have a lot of possession in these two games, and I think we've got to use it far better than we didn't use it against Newcastle. We couldn't get our own half. So really big task coming up against Brentford. They're a decent side. And I suppose let's hit straight into the Brentford preview, actually. So I'm going to try something a little bit different. I normally have the team news up for you, but I'm just going to go through it and we can pick it together. But look, let me give you a little bit of a background on Brentford. Obviously, they're in a fantastic season at the moment. Now, in my ignorance, and fair play to the Brighton fan on the football villain who said, put the comment in, I thought Fulham was a brilliant game. Sorry, Brentford was a brilliant game on Saturday. 3-3. Brentford led 3 times and Brighton equalised. But admittedly, I watched the highlights. I didn't watch the game. The Brighton fan got in contact with me and basically said, did you know that we had 33 shots against Brentford and we had 15 shots on target? Brentford had 7 shots. So Brighton did have a lot of chances in that game. And if you look at Brentford's last few games, they've drawn with Brighton, they've drawn with Leicester, they beat Southampton, they lost to Everton, and they beat Fulham. So they're not in great form. They're having a great season, but they're not in great form. Jagdish, welcome to Members Club. We've got to solve our midfield. That's what this game is going to all be about. So look, this is how I think we need to line up. I mean, David De Gea's in. Oh no, that's not the right thing. What am I doing? David De Gea in goal. Hopefully Wan-Bissaka's back fit. I'd play Wan-Bissaka. Although, actually, I picked Dalot because I want to be more attacking in this game. So I'm going to go Dalot. Martinez and obviously Luke Shaw and Varane. We need to try and be strong at the back. And then into the midfield, there is no Casemiro. So for me, we tried it a little bit. I would go with Fred and I would go with Sabitzer, which allows you to put Bruno here. And then I would go, Martial's got to start. Rashford's got to start. There's no doubt about that. And I thought Anthony did quite well. And if I just come out here, hello everybody. If I come back here, that team's not bad. That team is not bad. And you look at that team compared to, and look, great point by Pede. He says Shaw at left centre back, Martin at CDM. You could do that, but I like that team, and it's infinitely better than the team that played against Newcastle. Now, he couldn't have started Martial against Newcastle. I agree that was probably a step too far. But Martial's done half an hour. Start him against Brentford, play him for an hour. Then, when an hour's gone, put Rashford central and bring Sancho or Pellistri on the wing. Just stop the Weghorst crap. We all like Weghorst, but it's just not working. And that's the kindest thing I can say. And Scott McTominay doesn't work. Look, Fred, Sabitzer and Bruno at home. You don't need to worry about being away to Newcastle who are good in the air. Let's get the high line, let's get the aggression and speed in the midfield, and let's get some creativity in that side. Because I'll tell you something else that's very interesting about Brentford. Felix says, speak for yourself. I don't even like Weghorst. Neither does Jacob. Okay, people are turning on Weghorst. We can talk about that in a bit. But there'll be lots of analysis. There'll be lots of previews. There'll be lots of websites telling you about this game. I think the most interesting thing about this game is this. Brentford can score goals. Away from home this season, I think they've scored 18 and conceded 23. They're around mid-table for their away form, so they're more than capable of going and getting results. They've won 3, drawn 7, lost 4, so they don't lose that many away from home, Brentford. They've been to Arsenal and drawn. They've been to the Etihad and won, so they're more than capable away from home. But if there's one thing you want to know about Brentford, and I'll tell it you now, we lost 4-0 to them in August. This is a revenge job. These players need to get out on that pitch in front of our crowd and absolutely have that in their head. Brentford beat you 4-0 and embarrassed you at the start of the season. It's about time you got a backbone and started remembering these wounds and the scars and actually going out there and doing something about it. We owe Brentford one. We owe them a beating, and that's what needs to happen on Wednesday night. And even when they beat us in August, they only had 30% possession. We had 70% possession and we lost 4-0 at their place. Now, this is an interesting thing because if you look at Brentford's last few games, against Brighton, they had 27% possession. 27% possession against Brighton. Against Leicester, it was 53%. Against Southampton, they had 33% possession against bottom of the league. Against Everton, it was higher. They had 70%, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Against Fulham, they had 36%. They don't like having the ball, Brentford, which is an absolute tick in the box for us because we couldn't stay on the ball against Newcastle. I think United with possession, if we can have possession, is a real positive. And Brentford will give us the ball. They'll try and counter us, but to be honest, countering Manchester United with Maguire in the back line like they did in August is very different to trying to counter Man United when you've got Dalot or Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez and Shaw. We've got recovery pace there. So they're going to give us the ball at Old Trafford. You've got 75,000 fans. The players need to turn up. We need to get on the ball and use it. And that's why, for me, you've got to play Sabitzer, Bruno and Fred. Fred for the tenacity. Because one thing that Brentford do is they are tenacious. They do counter quick. And therefore, you've got to get as much pace in that midfield and the defence as you can. So I think Fred has to play in this game, as does Sabitzer and Bruno. McTominay, if I see him starting, I'm worried. I'm really worried. He's been so crap the last 2 games. Get Fred, Sabitzer and Bruno. Let's get through these next 2 games and bring the guys back, Casemiro and Eriksen, that will steer us hopefully to top 4, the Europa League final and the FA Cup. I've got a bad feeling about this game, especially without Casemiro, says Mohamed. Well, look, I agree with this, but you've got to look. I mean, Mainu says you can't control with that midfield. Trust me, Brentford don't want the ball. That's not how they play. They don't play like that. Go through their whole season, they're averaging in a lot of games less than 30% possession. That's how little they want the ball. They're organised, they are well organised, they do counter, but we're going to get a free pass to the ball at Old Trafford, and we've got to use it. Sometimes these games are played out before they've even started. We've got to be good on the ball and we've got to move the ball well. Look, if Jadon Sancho was anywhere near his best, he'd be perfect for a game like this. Rashford's got to be on it. But with that back 5 and that midfield 3 and that front 3, I think that team looks decent and we're going to have the ball. Let's go and beat them 2 or 3-0. Let's get the 3 points. The only game they've had over 50% possession, apart from a Leicester game, was Everton. Well, Everton don't want the ball either. I'm not going to preview Everton here, but Brentford and Everton do not want the ball. They do not want the ball. They're willing to let you have the ball. We're playing them back-to-back at Old Trafford, and we need 6 points. We've got to go and get those 6 points, and then Casemiro's back. Newcastle was a horrible loss, but look, we're playing 2 good teams to play at Old Trafford, and they don't want the ball. We've got to go and win it. We've got to get hold of that ball and we've got to make things happen. And you know what's interesting as well? Brentford are bloody brilliant at home. Guess who they've got at home at the weekend? Newcastle. So go and beat Brentford, give them a good hiding, and then they're going to have to react at home to Newcastle, which does us a favour. So it could fall into our lap, but you've got to go and get it. You've got to go and want it. Weghorst can't start this game. Martial, whatever his future is at Manchester United, Ten Hag has got to start him. Talking about having possession, talking about linking thing up. When I think about Anthony Martial fit, I think about Anthony Martial back to goal, little clever link-up play, little clever runs creating space. If we can get 1 hour out of Anthony Martial at home on Wednesday night and he can do those things in the first half, I think we'll win the game. I think the difference between Weghorst and Anthony Martial is the difference between a wheelbarrow and a Formula One car. I think the movement that Martial will bring you, the intricate little link-ups. Look, I'm going to talk about Weghorst in a minute, but why can't we play with Mainoo? He controls the ball and is more confident as Aka. Well, that's down to Ten Hag, isn't it? I'm not here to talk about that. But what I am here to talk about is Anthony Martial. When I compare Weghorst and I compare Anthony Martial, I see a player that's quick in Anthony Martial. I see a player that's got better movement than Weghorst. And I see a player that can link up the play and hold up the play and make intelligent runs that pull people out. Weghorst could try and make an intelligent run. He could try and say, I'm going to drag the centre back to the right hand side to create space for Rashford to run into. But what'll happen is the centre back will see Weghorst running off there and he'll go, I'm not going with him. He's crap. He's slow. There's no need. I don't need to. If Martial peels off, you've got to go with him because if the ball goes to him out wide, he's got space. We've got to start Martial. The risk is that he gets injured, but at the end of the day, if he's going to get injured, he's going to get injured. We can't wrap him up in cotton wool. We have got to get 3 points against Brentford and Everton. We've got to do it. I'm not worried about top 4 unless we drop points against Brentford and Everton. You've got to win these 2 games. People think United... I mean, I've heard such nonsense today. I've heard so much nonsense about the top 4 race is open. I don't think it is. And I'm the guy, like some of you, that never felt that top 4 was really up for grabs this season. Even in January, February, I was like, I wasn't sure. But, since March, I've looked at it and gone, the running we've got, the players we've got, the run we've been on since December, we will get top 4. And I think we will. And that's what we've got to do. Go and get it. We won't be getting top 4 if we drop points against Everton and Brentford. Bourbon with Friends has just gifted 5 memberships. You're a legend, mate. Thank you very much for that. So, yeah, look, I think that team there is a team that actually looks decent. There's a massive Casemiro hole there. But realistically, if you could take Fred out and put Casemiro in that team, I think you've got a good team. And I said this afternoon, that's about as good as it's going to get. That team's about as good as it's going to get this season. Take Fred out of that team, put Casemiro in it, and that's about as good as we can get. Next season, I'm looking at that team, I'm thinking, look, yeah, we need an out-and-out world-class striker. We need another midfielder. I'd like to see a midfield 3 of De Jong, Casemiro and Bruno. I'd like to see a striker like Osman, and that's the progression for next season. But for what we've got right now, I mean, Casemiro and Eriksen back, and I think you've got our best team. So, look, I think the Newcastle game has knocked a lot of people's confidence, but we don't need to pick the same team as Newcastle. The Newcastle team was crap. That McTominay Weghorst thing's one of the weirdest things I've seen from any manager. I mean, that Newcastle results got Man United fans they've gone dizzy. The amount of tweets I've seen from people today saying that Solskj was underrated. I'm like, God, that's how bad that results got us. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was not underrated. He was not underrated. In my opinion, he was not underrated. He was a very bad manager who even I was fooled by. All of us were. I was singing Ollie's at the wheel. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't. But he was a bad manager. Trust me, the amount of stories that have come out since then, the amount of stuff that was swept under the carpet around people like Mason Greenwood and stuff like that, the fact he didn't even coach the players. He went on a brilliant away run when there was no bloody fans in the ground. He wasn't a good coach. And people want to say, wow, it's because of Ronaldo. He wasn't a good coach. We've got a good coach. But he made a bad mistake yesterday. That Weghorst McTominay thing was some sort of weird thing that was never going to work. We don't need to see it again. We don't have to see it again because we can put a team like that out. Why always a double pivot? Bruno as 10 and Sabitzer as 8 would be a force, says Felix. I just don't think, Felix, we've got anybody that can hold the midfield. I think it has to be a double pivot because we haven't got anyone who can hold the midfield. Now, I quite like what somebody said about playing Luke Shaw as left-sided centre-back, Malacia as left-back and putting Martinez in at CDM. I think he could hold the midfield. But, look, we've got 2 options, really. I think Victor Lindelof and Lisandro Martinez could hold the midfield. I'd consider it. I just don't think Ten Hag will do it. But I would like to see it happen. Hi Mark, Man United will be a title challenger next season with a few more additions, says Sean, Luke, Doherty, O'Brien. Sean, with all due respect, I hope you're right, but I don't care. I think at this moment we've got to look at the reality. Next season will be taken care of by whether we've got new owners in. This season, we haven't sorted out top four. We haven't won the Europa League, and we've not won the FA Cup. That has to be the focus for Manchester United. Daniel Crawley says, Mark, this United team seems to drop their heads when they're losing. Man United teams of old would never drop that. Well, we know about that. We know we've got this. We know we've got this mentality problem at Manchester United at the moment. And as I said this afternoon as well, we've just got to try and get through this season and let Ten Hag solve those problems in the summer. And just look, you know what? Gary Neville can't stand me for some reason. We've never met. He obviously has a, personality that he lets people on Twitter get on his nerves. But I don't know the guy. I can't dislike him for, because he dislikes me. I take anybody on face value in relation to what they tweet out. I think Neville talks a load of nonsense sometimes. I think he talks a load of sense sometimes. And I was listening to what he had to say earlier about Weghorst, and I absolutely agree with it. I think he's absolutely spot on. Weghorst has come in as a stopgap, and we need to be grateful for that, because Ten Hag was given no money. He was told to go and get somebody on loan. In a January transfer market, getting somebody on loan, you're going to end up with people like Agallo, and that's what happened. We ended up with Weghorst. He's not that good. He's limited. But you know what? It's about as good as we could get. So I don't dislike Weghorst, because he's come in and done a job that we've needed. At times, we've just needed somebody to run around up front because we've got no one else to. That sounds ridiculous for a club like Manchester United, but search your heart. It's true. We needed somebody, anybody, to just play up front for us at times over the last few weeks, and Weghorst has become that. I mean, I described him as Peter Crouch pissed yesterday, and that's sometimes what he's been like. I don't dislike the lad, but if we're being completely honest, he probably doesn't start for any Premier League club, but he's starting for Man United. And I'm not over-egging the pudding there. I'm not, pulling out some silly analogy about, cats trying to bury their shit on a marble floor, or poppadoms going through, bowling balls through poppadoms, or wedding night dicks. I'm being serious. Wout Weghorst probably doesn't start for any Premier League side, and he's starting for Manchester United. That's not his fault. You could argue it's not Ten Hag's fault. It's really a case of we had no money and we had to do something, and that's what we ended up with. And we've seen this before. You can't produce magic out of nothing. And, Wout Weghorst, all right, Harry Potter, magic, whatever, it's not worked out, but ultimately we needed something. I said it at the time, something was better than nothing. And I'd argue that with anybody. Anybody who says, we'd be better off with nothing, we wouldn't. We needed a body. We needed somebody, because Cavani's not been replaced, Ronaldo's not been replaced, and Martial's been injured. And Rashford can play up front, but then who plays on the left wing? Like, Weghorst may not be everybody's cup of tea, and he's certainly not mine, but I don't mind him, because actually, at times, just having somebody running around's fine. But it's not sustainable. It's a very, and at times it's bit as on the arse, like it did yesterday. At times he's very redundant. He's very limited. He's slow. But if you get into that mindset that he's just literally a body in the team, and we've needed that, we were so short. United knew, Gary Neville said this, and he's right. United knew that Ronaldo was gone at the start of November. They had 2 months before the transfer window opened, and their plan was Wout Weghorst on loan. It's abysmal. I don't want to make it about the Glazers, because I want the Glazers to go and I want new owners in, but it was pitiful. It was pitiful what they did with Rangnick, and it's pitiful what they've done with Ten Hag. But we are where we are, and I think we can just about do it now. Mark, what do you think of Ten Hag being impatient with Sancho? I personally feel he doesn't suit the system and should look for a move elsewhere. Khalik, there was a video this afternoon where we went into it in a lot of depth. It's probably best if you watch that. But look, I still think there's time for Sancho. But the big problem with Sancho is, actually, just to bring it back into focus, the big problem with Jadon Sancho is this. We're picking a team for Brentford. We've got no Garnacho. We've got no Casemiro. We've got no Eriksen. And he's still not getting in the team. That's the problem. £75 million, 300 grand a week Jadon Sancho's got, is that even with injuries after a 2-0 loss, he's not being put in the starting lineup. Now, maybe Ten Hag will start him. I hope he does, and I hope he does play well. But I wouldn't start him, and that's the problem that Sancho's got. He just can't get into the team. Trash says, you rate Sancho but tear into McTominay endlessly, mate. Jadon Sancho may not be doing very well at Man United, but he hasn't had 5 years of underwhelming shit at Manchester United. And that's, I'm sorry to be blunt, but I'm at the end of the road with McTominay. I just can't see the point. I've supported United all my life. I've watched players that have been sold. Like, I can think of loads, like Kieran Richardson, way better than McTominay, never got half the years that he's got. There's been so many players at Man United that we've moved on. I mean, James Garner's better than bloody McTominay. He can't even get in the Everton team. Will Eriksen be available for the Everton game? Very unlikely, Darren, but, very, very unlikely. It'd be great if he was. The poor result yesterday clearly shows a lack of squad depth. Erik ten Hag is still figuring things out, and yesterday it was clear he didn't have the players as Dimitri. Look, I disagree with that. I think that Erik ten Hag has got to take the blame for yesterday. Sometimes as a manager, you do have to take the blame. Let's come away from that. Sometimes you've got to take the blame as a manager. He's got to take the blame. Sometimes he'll make mistakes. Sir Alex Ferguson made mistakes. Arteta's made mistakes. Pep Guardiola makes mistakes. I think that the best thing a football fan can do is be, open-minded and have their own opinions. And I'm a massive fan of Erik ten Hag, but he will make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. That's the way it is. Marcus Rashford had a crap game yesterday. He's been arguably one of our best players this season. In fact, he has. Just because somebody's good doesn't mean they can't have a bad day. He got a lot wrong yesterday. He's had a lot right. The amount of times in the second half this season we've said he's a genius. Yesterday, he got outthought by Eddie Howe and he couldn't respond. Rory says, why do we play such a deep line? Everyone was saying the reason we were playing a deep line last year was because of Maguire. Clearly wasn't, says Rory. Well, mate, you're not thinking, are you? We do play a deep line. You have to play a deep line with Harry Maguire, but we still play a deep line without Harry Maguire. That's the question. Like, you have to play a deep line with Harry Maguire because you're screwed if you don't. We are still playing a deep line, you're right. I think the reason we're playing a deep line is because we are still very much fundamentally a team that counters. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. I think the remarkable nature of Erik ten Hag's season is that he probably hasn't picked his strongest team that he'd like to pick this season more than a handful of times, and yet we've had a really good season. Most of this season, he hasn't been able to pick Anthony Martial. A lot of this season, Bruno Fernandes has been playing out of position. United's success this season, and you can call it success compared to the last few years. It's not where we want to be, but it's still success. It makes me laugh when people say, Goldbridge says United's season's been built on a strong defence. But man doesn't realise they lost to 7-0 to Liverpool and 2-0 to Newcastle. I do realise they're losses. A loss is 1-0 as much as it's 7-0. But fundamentally, if you look at our wins, most of our wins are won by 1 goal. That, to me, is a team that is built on a strong defence. Go back to that Brentford loss. We followed it up with, I think, 1-0 wins at Southampton and Leicester, and a 1-goal win over, I think it was 3-2, wasn't it, against Liverpool. Our defence has been the focal point of Ten Hag ever since those first 2 losses. Yeah, there's been some heavy defeats, but realistically, I think De Gea, Martinez, Varane, Casemiro, that diamond has really been the focal point. And we have defended deeper to, I think bring teams onto us to hit them quick. I think we're not. It's a bit like Anthony at Ajax. We haven't seen the Anthony of Ajax yet, and we haven't seen the Ten Hag Ajax yet. I think we will do. And it's remarkable, like I say, that we've won the Carabao Cup, that we're still in the top 4, that we're still in the Europa League and we're still in the FA Cup, because we're not what Ten Hag is all about. We're not hitting 70% possession regularly. We're not hitting over 10 shots on target regularly. And we're not playing our football in the opposition half regularly. Well, that's what Ajax and Ten Hag was all about. So you're right to highlight that. You are right to highlight that. But I think it just comes down to the fact that Ten Hag had those 2 bad results and really decided to, and probably rightly, to not shut up shop, but to play a certain brand of football that these players can play. Let's not forget, a lot of these footballers have been playing counter-attacking football for at least 5 years. Mourinho did it. Solskjaer did it. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I don't think Ten Hag trusts these players to play or believes that these players can play the way that he wants to. We're in year 1 of the Ten Hag journey. I think people expect... I remember Ben Foster saying back in September, the Ten Hag style of football will take at least 18 months. Well, we're not even at 12 months in yet. So it's a really good point, but, you know, on one hand, you can't criticise these players and say they don't have the mentality and they're not good enough, and then expect us to be playing like prime Man City. It will take time. What I think is impressive is that we've managed to win trophies and put ourselves in good positions, even though we're clearly not where Ten Hag wants us to be yet. And look, Varane and Martinez are more than capable of pushing up on the halfway line. Luke Shaw and Dalot are more than capable of becoming supplementary wingers. Casemiro is more than capable of playing a higher line as well. But I think it's about possession. There's no point in playing a high line if you're not going to keep possession high up the pitch. And we can't keep possession high up the pitch because you've got people like Rashford, Weghorst, Bruno, Anthony, who are not in tune with keeping the ball up high up the pitch. And I think most of that comes down to the number 9, by the way. I think with Martial in the team, he is somebody who can play with his back to goal, hold the ball up, play little intricate 1-2s and everything. There's no point playing a high line when you're not going to be able to hold the ball up high up the pitch. And I think that comes down to the fact that for most of this season, Ten Hag hasn't had a number 9 that fits in with that system. Unpopular opinion, Anthony/Pellistri is the future. We should go for Dyche as director of football, says Kyle. And I said it a few weeks ago. Post-World Cup, Barca away side, we simply haven't played well. Love Ten Hag, but genius is too strong for now. Our ball retention is crap, something I thought he would address, says Ben. There you go. I love you, Mark, says Abba. Been following you for about 5 years. Much love from Down Under, says Abba. Thank you very much for that. Look, I think that yesterday's result is really, really, really difficult to take. I'm going to talk about Frimpong in a minute because there is news about that. Yesterday's result is difficult to take, but I said it straight afterward. I think it's a bit of a reality bite. I think some people think we're better than we are. The results have been brilliant. Winning a trophy has been brilliant. Still being in the cups is brilliant, and still being in the top 4 is brilliant. But there is still so much to do. And I remember saying before the season started, I don't think we'll get top 4, even with the signings that we've made. And at that point, we didn't have Casemiro. So look, that changes things, and it has changed things. But I certainly didn't expect Manchester United to be playing like Ajax in the first season. I think it will be more about next season because we haven't got the players. If you want to play a high line and you want to play 70% possession, you've got to be able to keep the ball in the opposition's half. Now, our possession sometimes is quite good. Even against Newcastle yesterday, it was around 50%. But we didn't get the ball in the opposition half. It was being passed around the back 4. I think that we need to get players that are comfortable on the ball higher up the pitch, and that involves confidence, chemistry and trust, and we don't have that at the moment. Like yesterday, I thought we were okay in the first half at moving the ball from De Gea into the back 4, into the midfield, and then you knocked it to Rashford or Anthony or Weghorst or McTominay. Well, McTominay never wanted it, and you knock it into them and they're doing little flicks. I know flicks look good, but if you want to keep possession, you shouldn't be flicking the ball blindly. If you want to keep possession, you should be receiving it into your feet, holding it up, giving it to your right back and moving. That's what United should have been doing yesterday, but we'd play it out from the back into the midfield, they'd find a pass, it'd be a little flick, and Newcastle have got it back. That's not how you do it. You need people who can hold the ball up and play the pass. People like Eriksen. As I say, Jadon Sancho would be good at it if we could get him in form. Do you think Aaron Wan-Bissaka could play CDM, Kyle? No. And Bart, we did play a high line yesterday. Our forwards and centre midfield was just ineffective for whenever we did. With Maguire, we're guaranteed to play deep, says SK. Mark, please get a tour in Australia. I'm begging, says Abba. And how do you play Weghorst in our upcoming games, Mark? Do we bench him or be smarter with him, says CJ? Look, I'll be blunt about Weghorst. Weghorst experiment needs to be over. Even if Martial gets injured again, it needs to be over. Weghorst is just a body. He's just a stopgap. He is literally just somebody that came in that we needed to bring somebody in. But as a starter or a number 10, it doesn't work. Weghorst needs to sit on the bench and be used in the last 20 minutes as an emergency option or as to give somebody a rest. Weghorst cannot be starting games anymore. It doesn't work. Clubs have figured him out. I remember this happening with Zlatan. And Zlatan had a good season with us. But I remember Bournemouth coming to Old Trafford against Manchester United. Zlatan was up front and they pressed I think it was Eddie Howe, actually. It may well have been Eddie Howe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Eddie Howe might have been the coach. They saw that Zlatan was slow I think we might have had Rashford on the wing again. They saw that Zlatan was slow. They were at Old Trafford and they were pressing us on the edge of our own box because their centre-backs were stood on the halfway line. Fast forward to yesterday, we're at St James's Park. Eddie Howe's the coach. Shah and Botman are stood on the halfway line, and Newcastle's press is a piece of piss. If your centre-backs are stood on the talk about a high line, flip it to Newcastle. If your centre-backs are stood on the halfway line, your midfield and your attackers are going to have a very easy job pressing the life out of a football club. Now, I saw some Newcastle player today, Murphy, wasn't it, saying, David De Gea was very hesitant on goal kicks. I'm not bloody surprised. I'm not surprised at all, because if you're taking the goal kick, whether it's Varane, whether it's De Gea, whatever, and you look up and you can see Newcastle's centre-back stood on the halfway line, you're like, right, if I kick this long, Weghorst is crap in the air, so they're going to win the header on the halfway line. If I kick it really long to beat the defensive line, Weghorst ain't going to get there because he's too slow. I want to play out from the back, but Newcastle are so high up the pitch, they're covering all the passing angles. So Varane and Martinez have to come into the 6-yard box. And then when you do that, Newcastle have got spare men to go and cover Delot, Luke Shaw. McTominay doesn't want the ball. So, look, people think it's because of distribution. It's not because of distribution yesterday. You can talk about distribution all you like, but logically think about it. The high line of Newcastle's on the halfway line. We can't hit it long. We've got to pass out, and Newcastle have got everything covered. This is the problem. And this is why Weghorst can't be used anymore, because loads of teams are going to do this. They literally have got centre-backs on the halfway line and they're pressing the life out of us. So Weghorst just can't start for me anymore. I'm not turning on about Weghorst. I know you won't like what I'm about to say, but I'd rather they got a midfielder instead of Weghorst and try Elanga as a striker, says Sheriff. Well, look, I probably would try Elanga as a striker now. As I say, I don't think we can use Weghorst anymore apart from a cameo. I just don't think it's worked. Thank you very much for your super chat. Then we have no choice but to play the kids, says Carl Robinson. Nee says, what did Nee say? Remember, these players always let their manager down in second season. Next season is the acid test. That's why he's got to be active in the transfer market. Got to be active in the transfer market. Hi, Mark. I think unless we get Eriksen back very soon, our top 4 spot could be under threat. Not enough creativity in the front three, says Mike Calvert. Well, if you've tuned in a little bit late, I'll just go back here. This is the team I would pick against Brentford. I didn't do my preview, so I will come back here. We can pick this team, and it doesn't matter whether Casemiro's suspended or Eriksen's injured. We can pick this team. The back 5 picks itself. You put Fred with Sabitzer for some energy. You put Bruno in his proper position. You put Rashford on the left, Anthony on the right, and you put Martial. I think we'll win. If we picks this team, I think we win. If he puts McTominay or Weghorst in the team, it's up for grabs. I think if we pick this team, Brentford don't want the ball. They very rarely have possession above 30%. So basically, I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for United. And I'm going to base it on this. Brentford are a very good team, but we're playing at home. 75,000 fans, keep it under 0.1. 75,000 fans who are going to be up for it. We need to win. We're at home. Brentford smashed us in August. We owe them one. And we're going to have 70% possession. With that team, we win the game. And that's what I'm going to go for. And we have to win it. We have to win it. Absolutely have to win it. Tom Davies says, I'd rather Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Well, look, interesting story coming out this evening from Plettigol, Germany, talking about Frimpong coming to Manchester United from Leipzig. Right back that we've been linked to quite a lot. I definitely think that there is something in this, because Fabrizio, who's on the show regularly, he was talking about Frimpong back in November. So I think that Ten Hag is definitely an admirer of Frimpong. And he certainly is a right back that Ten Hag thinks is the sort of right back that we need. It looks like we might try and do something here. It's certainly been going on for long enough, and the interest is clear. I find it interesting because I agree with Jacob. A striker, a CDM, and the centre-back is the priority, not a right-back. If we buy a right-back and we don't buy a centre-back, and Varane gets injured, we're picking Maguire again next season, and that will kill any hopes of winning a title. So I think you've got to get a centre-back, you've got to get a midfielder, and you've got to get a striker. Now, after those 3, if you want to go and get a right-back, let's go and do it. But I've got to be honest, I don't know why we're looking at a right-back. I look at this season, and I think Delot, up until the World Cup, was one of our best players. Since the World Cup, Wan-Bissaka's been one of our best players. What does that say? we've got 2 right-backs who this season have played really well. I don't see the point in buying a new one. Again, I don't think it's an area that we need to focus on. Ten Hag's the manager. He earns the right to do what he wants to do. But if we're going for a right-back over another centre-back, I'd be worried. I really would. So look, Frimpong's very interesting. I think we need to take the story seriously because we have been linked to him a lot. But unless Wan-Bissaka's asking to go, and we don't know that, maybe Wan-Bissaka wants to leave. I know that there was a lot of stories about Wan-Bissaka before Christmas about him, wanting to leave and United being willing to let him go. I don't know whether his sudden renaissance over the last few months has made him happy in Manchester. Maybe he doesn't want to be in Manchester anymore. Maybe he wants to leave, in which case signing Frimpong makes a lot of sense. And let's not forget, you could sell Wan-Bissaka for 25 million now. Like, he has actually had a lot of interest in him in January. Wolves liked him, Palace liked him. I can't remember who the other club was. The way he's played in the last few months, you could sell Wan-Bissaka and get a good fee for him. So, whatever you got for Wan-Bissaka, you'd probably pay for Frimpong anyway. But I don't think it's a necessity. John says, I love your show, Mark. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, John. And Jim Bob says, yeah, you could sell him for more now. Right, let's have a look at some of the members in the chat. Thank you very much for being a member. Tala says, how much will Kim Min-jae cost? So, 40 million. Tala is what he's going to be available for 2 weeks in June. So he's got a release clause. Daz Sweets is a member. He says, we have too many average players and what happened yesterday can always happen with that. I agree with you on that one, mate. Benson's a member. He says, we love prioritising the wrong positions. And Hale Europe is a member. He says, new contract for Wan-Bissaka or a new one is a must. Look, there's a lot of love for Wan-Bissaka in the chat. There always has been. But as I say, I don't mind buying a right back. And Paul Greaves, who's a member, says Timber gives cover at centre back and right back. And Solid Blake's a member and says, when will we get an update on the sale, which I'll talk about in a minute. So yeah, there's a lot of love for Wan-Bissaka in the chat. I appreciate that. But it does seem a little bit odd because he has been one of our best players since Christmas that we're looking to that we're potentially still looking at a right back. But look, that's the latest on Frimpong. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. In relation to the sale, there's not a lot to add, although there was an update this afternoon from, I think it was The Guardian. Basically, they were saying that there's expected to be an update this week, but everything's on the table. And what that means is United could move ahead with a final bidder. They could go to a third stage of bids, or there could be a third announcement that no one's really aware of at the moment. So it's April the 3rd. We're no closer to a sale of this club than we were 3 months ago. The transfer window basically opens in 7 weeks. It opens at the end of May. So, and people will be talking to players right now. So we need it to start moving. We need this update. Andy Cheetham says no to Frimpong. We need some movement this week, says Solid Blake. Well, apparently there will be some movement this week, but of course, sometimes no news is good news. I'd rather wait 2 weeks and we're moving ahead with a final bidder than get news this week that there's going to be another round of bids. Because if there's another round of bids, add another 2 weeks on, then you get those bids, then they've got to assess it. It'll be the end of May before then. I'm really starting to worry that we're going to get to a point where it's impossible for us to have new owners in by the time the transfer window opens. And I did read something today, I think it was from The Athletic, that there is money available to spend in the summer if the Glazers are still in charge. But let's be honest, we can all get, kidded by that. But whatever the Glazers spend in the summer will not be anywhere near what's available through Al Thani and Qatar or Sajim and Ineos. Because even if you don't want Sajim, even if you don't want Al Thani, they're both new owners in their first summer transfer window. They're going to want to show the fans their intent, and they will spend big money this summer. The Glazers don't need to spend big money if they stay. They'll just spend some money. So look, we do need some movement, and I think we are fast approaching a point where we will be in a summer transfer window where the Glazers are still in charge, because we're starting to run out of time for how quick this can get done. Glenny Boy said, what ideally will happen, and there is still time for it to happen, I must just add this, if United decide to go ahead with a final bidder, and that final bidder is, let's say, Al Thani, as long as they're talking and working towards a resolution and there's trust there, then the deal doesn't need to get done until the end of June, because Al-Thani could be saying, look, let's move forwards, let's agree the price, but while we're doing that, let's start getting these players in for Ten Hag, because that's part of why I want to buy the club. So things can move, but we've got to get to the final bid stage. We've got to get to who's going to buy the club, because it's not my fear that they're not going to sell. My fear is that here we are on April the 3rd, Sir Jim could buy it, Al-Thani could buy it, and so could 3 or 4 other people buy it. While that continues, we're not getting to the point that's going to benefit us and Ten Hag. We need to know who's buying it. And that's when we can start to make plans. Glenny Boy says, if it was City at the top instead of Arsenal, do you think that would have altered United fans' perception of how we're doing this season, says Glenny? Well, that's an interesting point. I think this season is really about Manchester United and how we perform as a team. We've seen Liverpool win the league, we've seen Manchester City win the league, and I think we don't like it, but we're used to them doing what they're doing. This season was always about us. We were never going to win the league. I think many of us expected Man City or Liverpool to win the league this year anyway. So I don't think it matters who's top of the league. It matters what we're doing and the journey that we are on. And the journey that we are on is a lot better than I thought it was going to be. But we've got to keep building. Psychologically, I'm already resigned to a crap summer window. This sale is like a bad episode of Dragon's Den, but 500 million in players in for January, says Mike Calvert. Thank you very much for your super chat there. Hail Europa says, I didn't expect top 4. And Makish says, I've played the game. Yeah, look, we can all... I think my main focus is what we do in the next 7 weeks. Can we get top 4? Can we win another trophy? But it's not any decent football fan and any decent football club can't be short-sighted. You've got to focus on the short term with an eye on the long term. If we do, there's almost like 3 battles going on here, isn't there? You've got that 7-week battle to make sure you get Champions League football and win another trophy. You've got the mid-term battle, which is to make sure that the summer transfer window is progressive. And then you've got the 3rd battle, which is next season. There's so many scenarios. We could mess up top 4 and not win a trophy and be back in the Europa League, but get new owners and then next season build. We could get top 4 and win a trophy but not get new owners and next season the handbrake goes on. Or we can get top 4, we do get new owners and next season's progression, and that's what I want, because we're all friends here and we all know what the cycle of Manchester United has been for the last decade. Manager comes in and gets backed. First season you qualify for the Champions League. Second season it starts to go wrong. Third season it's over. And overarching is the Glazers. So we're all aware of where this could go next second season. And you know, it's not like we haven't seen Ten Hag get beat. Got beat yesterday. Got beat by Liverpool. Got beat by Man City. Got beat by Brentford and Brighton. We have lost games this season badly. So we know that Ten Hag's not, unbeatable. He's not got that aura of invincibility. He is vulnerable with this set of players at times. So if we did get top 4, but we had a really bad summer transfer window, it's more than possible that next season we could start to implode and then season 3 is gone. We've got to be real about that. That's why it's so important that we do get this ownership sorted, because as I said, we could win another trophy and we could get top 4, but next season it could all fall apart. If we don't, the summer's really important. It's a 3-step plan. Let's get top 4 and win a trophy again. Summer, let's build and let Ten Hag remove players and bring players in to improve us. And then next year, let's make the next step. It's a 3-step plan. Short term, mid term, long term. Short term is the end of the season. Mid term is the summer. Long term is what happens next season. Bourbon with friends. Love the show, Mark. Try and watch live as much as possible with my work schedule in the US. Can't wait to be at Wembley for the semi-final. Hope we can sort you coming on our show sometime in the future. In Ten Hag we trust. Sounds good to me. Bourbon with friends. And tell you what, that'd be a cracking semi-final, by the way. Brighton, really good side. we've got some big games coming up, but nothing's bigger than Brentford on Wednesday night and Everton. We've got to get those results. Now, interestingly, Everton are 0-0 with Tottenham at half-time. I've got a bad feeling about that game. Having said that, they've both only had one shot on target. So, look, we could really do with Everton getting that result there, because it would keep us in fourth, wouldn't it? Somebody just said there, what's your priority? Let's do a poll on this. It's quite interesting. What's the priority? A really good question from one of our members. Shout out to the members. I am going to start trying and doing little sections in the show now where we just do members for a couple of minutes. It's an hour show, so everyone else still gets their bit. But thanks very much for being a member and supporting the channel. If you want to do that, click the join button. This is open to everyone. What's the priority? Top 4, Europa League, FA Cup. Now, there's different combinations. But if I said to you, you only get one of those, what would you go for? I've got to be honest. I feel that if I say Europa League, we're going right to the last game of the season and putting it all... It's like gambling, isn't it? You're going right to the end of the season and gambling on beating potentially Mourinho in the Europa League final. We've done that before when Mourinho was our coach. Part of me thinks if I had to choose between those three, I'd take top 4, because we've already won a trophy, and top 4 in this Premier League season over 38 games against the teams that are in it, I think it's harder to get top 4 this season than it is to win the Europa League. So I probably would say top 4, but I do understand Europa League, because Europa League gets you top 4, gets you Champions League football as well. Andy says, I've got my Frimpongs mixed up. He's not bad. I take it back, says Andy. And Ten Hag has spoken with Frimpong, his agent, today. Very trustful source in the Netherlands. What do you think about it? Says Justin. Well, we spoke about it, mate. And I think what I think about it is that if that's what Ten Hag wants to do, absolutely fine. But I find it strange that we want to buy a right back when we've got Wan-Bissaka and Dalot, who've both been very good for us this season. It may well be that Wan-Bissaka wants to leave, though. And if Ten Hag knows Wan-Bissaka wants to leave, and they've had a chat at Christmas and said, look, give me everything you can till the summer and then you can go, then bringing Frimpong in makes a lot of sense. But I think our priorities are striker, midfield and centre-back. Yeah. And I agree with you, Savage. I'm sick of Thursday night. I cannot wait. You know what? I'm sure you all feel the same as me. When you've got Champions League football, Thursday night's basically a night off. Because you don't watch Europa League. No one watches Europa League unless your team's in it. So to get Man United back playing Tuesday, Wednesday, it gives us a Thursday night again, doesn't it? You know, we can get a bit creative. Maybe that could be the chart show back, because I can never find any space for the chart show. But yeah, I don't want to play Thursday night football. And it always, just when we're out, you pull me back in. So yeah, it'd be great not to have it. It'd be brilliant not to have it. And you know, you want to be in the Champions League, of course you do. Looking at the poll, top 4, 63%. Europa League, 34%, and no surprises. The FA Cup, 3%. That does not surprise me at all. Ultimately, nobody, you know, the FA Cup would be nice, but, you know, no one's going to pick that. Andy Weatherall, thank you for gifting a membership there. Thank you. Big shout out to the members. David Byrne got it. Ayub says we need to level up our squad. Not the same old. We need to improve our squad. I get asked this a lot. I'm sure I'll get asked about it a lot in May, in June, July, and I'm sure a lot of you are asking yourselves this on the regular. If I could get rid of 3 players and bring 3 players in, so 3 in, 3 out, and I think Beth did a video about this on Saturday night, it's not enough. I want to get rid of 7 players and bring 5 players in, but if it was 3 in, 3 out for me, my 3 in would be Osimhen, De Jong and Kim Min-jae, and my 3 out would have to be Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay, and I mean, realistically, I don't care who the other one is, because they're not first teamers. I will keep Eriksen. I will keep Casemiro. I don't mind keeping Fred. I think Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay, and Wout Weghorst, who's a loanee anyway. So actually, Dean Henderson, because he's worth some money. So yeah, actually, that's it. 3 in, 3 out. 3 out would be Maguire, McTominay and Henderson, because they'll bring some money in. And then my 3 in would be Kim Min-jae, De Jong and Osimhen. And there are, look, on the ins, I'm not really massively gonna cry if it's different. If it's Vlahovic or it's Ramos, even if it's Harry Kane, if it's what Ten Hag wants, that's absolutely fine. Midfielders, if it's Bellingham or it's Casido or it's Kone, not bothered as long as it's what Ten Hag wants. At centre back, it could be Ndika, it could be Timber, it could be Kim Min Jae, it could be Bella Kotchup. I don't know. As long as we get those three positions covered, I don't really mind. Will you judge Ten Hag at the end of the season, says Ben? I think that's a cracking question as well. I've seen some people going in on Ten Hag today, and I've seen some people saying, how can you criticise Ten Hag? Not me personally, but how are people criticising him? I don't mind that. We're not sheep. We've all got an opinion. I can't stand it when people start going, he's having a moan at Ten Hag. I'm not a real United fan. Look, nobody's ordering any United fan to adore Erik Ten Hag. I think he's a fantastic coach. I'm very, very happy with him. Do I need to judge him at the end of the season? I don't think I do, you know. I mean, look, what I will say is I didn't like it yesterday morning reading that Man United are going to give Erik Ten Hag a contract till 2028. Where are we again? End of March, early April. Why is this even out there? I'm not saying Erik Ten Hag doesn't deserve it, but this is exactly what we did with Solskjaer. Ollie's at the wheel. Let's get a contract in late March. Oh my God, we fucked it up. And we're not in the top four anymore. So I think, look, Ten Hag's done a really good job. The next 2 months we have to look at. My feeling is that he will get top four. And if he gets top four, then this season's been a success based on what my personal prediction was at the start of the season. If you'd said to me top four and a trophy, I'd have bit your hand off. Could we have done more? Yes. But I think that's a good start for him. I think the bar will have been set a lot higher, and I'd already be saying next season we've got to be, fighting at the top and going deeper in the Champions League. But that's progression. I don't think criticism of Ten Hag is a problem, but I think realistically, you've also got to look at where we've come from, where we are, and there has to be a little bit of patience. I don't mean to be a Carragher, but would you be worried about our lack of height in defence if we get Frimpong? Says Amanda. And Drub, welcome to the members club. I don't think Manchester United's lack of height's a problem when Casemiro's on the pitch. He's very good in the air. Varane's very good in the air. Luke Shaw's very good in the air. I don't think United's... I mean, look, if Man United bring in a Ramos or a Harry Kane or an Osimhen, they're all pretty good in the air. I'm talking about defending from corners here. If you've got a corner and you're defending a corner, Ronaldo was brilliant at defending corners because he's good in the air. Casemiro's good in the air. Varane's good in the air. Luke Shaw's good in the air. So if you get Frankie de Jong in, he's quite big as well. So we need to bring some players in that are over 5'10". But I'm not massively worried about bringing in a small right back. I don't think it's a huge problem. There's not that many times that people are whipping crosses into your box anyway. I mean, I like a good cross into the box. I wish we did it more, but it doesn't happen that often. Andy Weatherall, welcome. Thank you for gifting a membership there as well. I don't think we'll get Osimhen, by the way. I think Osimhen will go to Chelsea, from what I'm hearing, which is a shame. I mean, look, we can all get behind Harry Kane when he signs for Man United, but it will massively piss me off if Osimhen... If we get Kane, great, but if Osimhen goes to Chelsea... I'm like, we could have got Osimhen, so that'll be my problem with that. Back post defending is very important, David, but a lot of that's about position. Delo and Wan-Bissaka aren't necessarily bad in the air. Their positional sense is not good. Who's your CDM alternative to Casemiro, says DC. I like that Kone. I like Manu Kone. I think he's got masses of potential, can play as an 8, can play as a CDM. I want some... Look, I don't want Casemiro to be replaced. That would be crazy. But what I do realise is that he's targeted and, he could get another red card this season and we'll miss him for another 4 games. So we need somebody that can do that job. The fact that nobody can do that job is a real problem. I was talking about this on the Football Fill-In, actually. Did you see Podence yesterday? No, Saturday. go to spit at Brennan Johnson. Now, they didn't send him off because they couldn't see any saliva moving, even though he went to do it. If that was Casemiro, it'd be a 5-match ban. I know it's true. Casemiro did this and got a 3-match ban. Casemiro tackled somebody and got a 4-match ban. We've got to be very, very careful. I think Casemiro is being targeted. I think the evidence is there. And we've got to have somebody in that team who can do that job. The person I'd like to do that job is somebody who can play alongside him as well. You can't have somebody just sat on the bench waiting for Casemiro to get sent off or injured. We need somebody that can play as an 8 as well. And in the modern game, that works because if you want to play a double pivot or a midfield 3, it works. So, I mean, I think Frenkie de Jong can do that role as well. So, Casido can do that role and be an 8. So, yeah, there's options. But, you know, ultimately, we've got to get this sale done before we can start doing stuff like that. Score prediction for Brentford and Juve, I'm going to go 2-0. 2-0 to Manchester United. If you've tuned in a bit late, Brentford rarely have more than 30% possession, so we're going to have a lot of possession. And if we pick this team, I think we'll win the game. He's got to freshen it up. You know, you can't send the same team out again. You can't have a situation where you've got Weghorst and McTominay in the attack. We need mobility, and we need some directness, and we need to play, you know, more on the front foot. And that's why I'd go with that team. Which youth player would you consider best as an understudy to Casemiro, says Andy? There's some good players in the youth system. I mean, I really like Gore. I don't know whether he's going to make it, but I do like Gore. A lot of people talk about Mainu. I'm not sure Iqbal's really going to be in that position. It's difficult with the youth team because there's a lot of good midfielders, but it's hard to sort of pinpoint whether they're more defensive minded or actually more attacking minded. So, but I don't think anybody's ready to do that at the moment. I think the short answer is we need to buy somebody this summer. Would you consider then Jonathan Tah as a defender? He's about 6 foot, says Darren. I'll consider anybody that Ten Hag thinks good enough. In another universe, would you drop Kane Osman idea and take both Ferguson and Højlund? But either way, you missed my super chat, the one before last, says Sheriff. Thank you. Sorry for that, mate. Sorry for that. Mate, I would take Ferguson and Højlund over Harry Kane every day of the week. I would probably take Ferguson and Højlund over Osman as well. Because actually, we do need 2 strikers. And we haven't replaced Cavani and we haven't replaced Ronaldo. So I wouldn't mind the idea of 2 strikers. And those 2 are very exciting. So good point. Good point. Thank you very much for that, Sheriff. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. I've really enjoyed the show tonight. We've got a press conference with Erik ten Hag tomorrow as well. I'm hoping he's not going to come into the press conference and say Martial's out, because that is where your heart starts beating fast and anything can happen. We can't afford to lose any players. I mean, that's one thing I haven't spoken about. We cannot afford to have anybody injured, can we? Hopefully not. We'll hear about that tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching. Legends in the chat as always. Big shout out to the new members. Big shout out to everyone who's been watching live or not live. Take care, stay safe, and I'll speak to you soon.